Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lazy Roll Talk. It's our last program in the month of April, and we broke record in this month. We had a record 4 million views so far in the month of April. So it has been a good month. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. All right, let's get started. After weeks of gritting its teeth under mounting U.S. pressure, China has hit a breaking point. And the world has been watching the exchanges between the two countries. We wonder, have China and the US really talked? Well, depends on who you ask. The CCP says no talks, no negotiations, no meetings. Meanwhile, Washington says, of course we're talking. We've been in daily contact. So, what's the truth? On April 23rd, Trump gave an interview at the White House. He said the US and China are in direct contact every day over trade issues. But the very next day, April 24th, China's Ministry of Commerce spokesperson flat out denied it. He called any talk of progress pure speculation with no factual basis. The foreign ministry doubled down. Spokesman Guo Jiakun told reporters, not once, but twice, that there were no negotiations, no consultations, and definitely no agreements. He even dismissed the reports as fake news. Back at the White House on the same day, April 24th, while meeting with Norway's prime minister, Trump told reporters, yes, talks had happened, in fact, just that very morning. And he said, we have been holding talks with them all along. And this time, there's hard evidence to back him up. South Korea's paper, I think it's called Junan Ibo, reported that at 7 a.m. on April 24th, a senior official from China's Ministry of Finance, along with about 10 aides, walked right into U.S. Treasury building, just steps from the White House. The report didn't name names, but it published a photo of the group. Well, their faces were blurred. And according to the report, the Chinese were very upset that they were caught on camera. Well, in my opinion, a delegation of a dozen people didn't look like a casual visit. It somehow suggests a serious bilateral meeting. And it didn't stop there. In a Time magazine interview published on April 25th, Trump dropped another bombshell. Xi Jinping personally called him. Trump said, he's called. Well, actually, he said this. This was the report. He said he's called, and I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf. And just when you think Beijing might quietly let the news fade, their embassy in Washington jumps online and posts, no talks. No talks, really. There's no talks. So when the CCP denies something that loudly, they're probably hiding the opposite. Meanwhile, back in China, the CCP is already making quiet concessions. According to CNN and traders in Shenzhen, Chinese customs just dropped the 125 punitive tariff on certain U.S. semiconductor products, specifically some types of integrated circuit chips. And some businesses even got refund notices. One company in Shanghai was told that tariffs they overpaid between April 10th and 24th could now be claimed back. And Bloomberg also reported that Beijing is looking to expand the exemptions, maybe to include medical devices and even aircraft leases. So yes, the US and China did talk, and Beijing is already making real concessions. But why has Beijing adamantly denied it? Here's the short answer. In the Communist Party's world, saving face is everything. Compromise is allowed, but it must never be made public because it's tied directly to the top leader's authority and the legitimacy of the regime. Admitting they were the ones who reached out, who backed down, would look like surrender. And that could destroy the party's almighty image. And that, my friends, is only the short answer. The long answer is more troubling, and it's the real focus of tonight's talk because it involves one of the hottest geopolitical flashpoints in the world, Taiwan. And we'll discuss, first of all, why Taiwan is at the heart of China's strategy in dealing with the US, specifically the Trump administration. And then why Beijing is desperate to seize Taiwan now. And then we'll give you some of the updates on the latest developments inside Taiwan and why they matter. Before I continue, I want to clarify that we certainly won't know exactly what Xi Jinping and Donald Trump talked about until months or even years later when the information is no longer sensitive. Everything I present here is analytical work based on information and views I read and compiled. So when Xi Jinping called Trump, he wasn't calling him to discuss trade or tariffs, because that would have played right into Trump's hands. So what did they talk about? Well, in my opinion, and the opinion of some other experts, Xi Jinping used the call to make demands about Taiwan. Why? Because Taiwan sits at the very top of CCP's priority list. It's the core issue in the CCP's entire strategy towards the US. That strategy was revealed in January by Chinese dissident Professor Yuan Hongbin, and I covered it in detail when the report first came out. Here's what we now know. After Trump won the election back in December, during a high-level Politburo meeting and a separate closed-door National Security Committee session, Xi Jinping disclosed what he told Biden in their face-to-face meeting. He demanded that the U.S. not only say it doesn't support Taiwan independence, he wanted Washington to explicitly oppose Taiwan independence and publicly support cross-strait unification. This was what his sources disclosed to Professor Yuan back then. It is part of Beijing's larger game plan. They want to use that strategy for Trump. The goal is to weaken Taiwan from the inside and eventually absorb it without firing a single shot. Here's the game plan. If the Trump administration were to publicly oppose Taiwan independence, it would deliver a major psychological blow to Taiwan's military and shake public confidence across society. Professor Yuan said that this kind of messaging would seriously erode Taiwan's internal resistance. And that's exactly how the CCP hopes to achieve its goal, winning the war without even starting one. Yuan's sources also reveal that Xi Jinping gave direct instructions to China's diplomatic corps. The foreign ministry, he said, must use quiet but effective channels to send a clear message to Trump's team, which is that if Trump publicly states he's against Taiwan independence and supports peaceful unification, then the CCP is ready to make major concessions in other areas. And this plan didn't just start recently. It's been in motion since before December. Yuan gave one example, which is Cambodia. Cambodia is practically considered a CCP satellite state, economically, politically, and militarily. But in December last year, something unexpected happened. Cambodia allowed the US and Japanese warships to dock at one of its ports on the South China Sea. So Xi Jinping and his advisors believe Trump is a deal maker at heart, a businessman who loves to negotiate. So their play is this: make concessions on issues Trump cares about in exchange for softening the US stance on Taiwan. That, according to Professor Yuan's sources inside the system, is the core of the CCP's strategy in dealing with Trump 2.0. And another prominent China scholar, US-based economist, Professor Chen Xiaonong, who I believe is based in Princeton, believes that Taiwan is at the heart of the US-China relationship and the tariff war, and that when Xi Jinping called Trump, the topic is Taiwan. He believes Beijing wants to set a political condition before it's even willing to start trade talks with Trump, and that condition is Taiwan. And here's how he explains it. The CCP is a political beast. Its leaders are skilled at power plays, not economic management. In their world, politics always comes before trade. And that's why to them, Taiwan is a more important strategic move than tariff negotiations. And this is not a secret. Beijing has publicly stated so. Bloomberg reported on April 15th that China laid out 4 conditions for starting trade negotiations with Washington. Okay, one is US officials must stop making disparaging remarks. 2 is the US must take a more consistent position on tariffs. 3 is both sides must appoint official negotiators. And the big one, the most substantial one, the one that actually carries the most weight, is that the US must address China's core concern, Taiwan. So if you look at those 4 conditions, it's obvious which one carries the most weight. Xi Jinping's demand to Trump was this: if you want to talk trade, you must first publicly oppose Taiwan independence. And CCP's plan is this: if Trump were to make that statement, the CCP's propaganda machine would kick into overdrive. They would blast out the message across Taiwan and globally that the United States has abandoned Taiwan, and America is now siding with Beijing on the question of unification. And it wouldn't matter how the US tried to clarify or walk it back later. Beijing knows how to twist the narrative. And let's not forget, they have more friends in mainstream media than Trump does. That's why many believe this is what Xi Jinping called Trump for. The offer is simple. Say you oppose Taiwan independence and we'll give you what you want in a trade deal. I don't believe Trump took the bait, and that's likely why Xi Jinping is furious. And that, in my opinion, is the real reason the CCP is now pretending that no talks ever took place. But you may say, come on, Beijing's been making this kind of demands for decades, and what's new? Here's what's new, or what's different now: the urgency. Beijing has never been this desperate to take Taiwan, and there are 3 big reasons. First, China's economy is bleeding out. Beijing desperately needs a financial blood infusion to stay afloat, and they've set their eyes on Taiwan, on its wealth, cutting-edge industries, and military strength. They want Taiwan's semiconductors, medical technology, and private capital. In short, the CCP wants to plunder Taiwan's economic strength, technological edge, and personal wealth. Seizing Taiwan will give Beijing the lifeline it needs to resuscitate its dying economy. And reason number 2 is a military takeover is becoming less and less realistic. Why? Well, because the PLA is in chaos, plagued by purges, corruption, and internal instability. You can watch my many programs on that topic, so I won't go into details here. Meanwhile, Taiwan's defenses are getting stronger. US-Taiwan cooperation is deepening, and at this point, launching a full-scale invasion of Taiwan is next to impossible, and the CCP leader knows it. And reason number 3 is Beijing worries that, how do I put this? It worries that its stealth approach to Taiwan unification is losing momentum, and time isn't on their side. So let me explain this. after the one country, two systems model failed in Hong Kong, Beijing stopped even talking about it, right? For Taiwan, it has switched to a stealth approach. It's a soft takeover from within approach that can be described as a gradual cross-strait integration. It's a gradual integration. So the plan is to make Taiwan slowly, quietly, and almost unknowingly merge into mainland China through political infiltration. Specifically, the tactics are buying off politicians, controlling narratives, embedding influence, and enable pro-Beijing politicians to eventually control Taiwan legislative and even the executive branch. But unfortunately, the Taiwanese public is increasingly aware of CCP's game plan and is resisting pro-Beijing politicians. The CCP's secret operatives in Taiwan are facing growing hostility and shrinking room to operate. As time goes on, these forces will be further weakened. And that is why time is not on Beijing's side. The longer they wait, the more Taiwan strengthens its defenses, and the harder it becomes for Beijing to unify, quote unquote, unify the island by any means. And so this is the third reason why CCP feels a sense of urgency. So here's what's been happening on the ground in Taiwan. And it explains why Beijing has panicked. So just a little bit background information on Taiwan's politics. So Taiwan's parliament, which is called the Legislative Yuan, has a total of 113 seats after the 2024 election, or the legislative elections. The pro-Beijing Kuomintang, or KMT, has 52 seats. The ruling DPP party has 51, just short by one. However, there's a third party. That's the Taiwan's People's Party, TPP. It's also secretly pro-Beijing. It has 8 seats, and there are two remaining seats belong to independents. So now the KMT and then the People's Party have teamed up. They form a majority in the Legislative Yuan, pushing the DPP, the ruling party, into the minority. And ever since then, it's been a legislative deadlock. The DPP government has struggled to get anything passed. New policies are getting blocked. Even the national budget has been slashed and even frozen by the opposition alliance. So frustration has boiled over. Now, around the Lunar New Year time this year, grassroots groups across Taiwan launched a massive recall campaign targeting pro-CCP lawmakers. And what's remarkable about it is that this effort is bipartisan. Some old school KMT veterans who are staunchly anti-communists have joined forces with DPP supporters. Their goal? Purge the lawmakers, purge the legislature of pro-Beijing politicians. Now the campaign is reaching a feverish stage. Citizen groups are working around the clock to hit their signature goals. Of the total 35 KMT lawmakers facing recall efforts, around 25 to 27 are expected to move into the second phase of petitioning. And it's estimated that 10 to 12 may actually be recalled. And here's the key point. The DPP only needs to flip 6 seats to regain control of the legislature. Right now, things are looking promising for them. And guess what? Beijing is panicking. According to Professor Yuan, who has sources inside the CCP system, Xi Jinping's Taiwan Working Group just issued a classified directive with Xi Jinping's personal instructions. The document spells out two major fears in Zhongnanhai. The first fear is that the CCP believes that at least 15 pro-CCP lawmakers in Taiwan could be recalled. And they admit there's little they can do to stop it. And the second fear is that they are deeply concerned that those lawmakers will be replaced by staunchly anti-CCP candidates, including some of the leaders of the recall movement. And that's not all. There are two more reasons for the CCP's growing anxiety. One is that for the first time ever, Taiwan's recall movement is openly using quote, defend Taiwan, oppose the CCP as its core platform. This kind of messaging used to be taboo in Taiwan. Now it's front and center, and Beijing understands its impact. And the second concern is the recall campaign has caused a major rift inside the KMT. Like I said, some traditional KMT voters, especially those who've always been anti-communists, are now siding with the DPP, uniting around the shared goal of resisting Beijing. And this kind of cross-party alliance is something Beijing fears most. So, if this momentum continues, it could completely dismantle the CCP's influence in Taiwan, which has long depended on political proxies inside the island's democratic system. So now we're seeing signs that Beijing is scrambling to regroup. The leadership of the KMT party has recently visited Beijing to re-strategize. So 2 days ago, actually 3 days ago, on April 26, the KMT held a massive rally right in front of the presidential office in Taipei. Supposedly, over 200,000 people showed up. But some people claim that some of the people there were bought. They were given financial incentives to go. I read some of the news saying that. But anyways, the organizer claimed 200,000 people showed up. Every KMT heavyweight was there, including former President Ma Ying-jeou. And the chairman of the TPP party, the Taiwan's People's Party, stood with them in full support. So this KMT-TPP alliance is now publicly accusing President William Lai of being a dictator. Their ultimate goal is to remove him from office. Mainland Chinese media outlets widely reported the news, with headlines cheering for the anti-William Lai alliance. President Lai fired back, saying, if you are truly against dictatorship, you should go protest in Tiananmen Square, not in Taiwan, which is a democratic nation. Well, I don't believe the PLA will launch a military invasion of Taiwan anytime soon. But what I do worry about is that the CCP might try to repeat what it did in South Korea. Look at what just happened to President Yoon Suk-yeol. He was impeached and removed, and South Korea now risks falling into the hands of a pro-Beijing government after the next election, right? I mean, there's an election coming up. Has it already happened? I lost track of what's happening in South Korea. I don't think it has happened. Anyways, I just hope the people of Taiwan don't fall into that trap. So to summarize, what started as a trade war has revealed something far more urgent: Beijing's desperation to use economic pressure to force a political deal over Taiwan. Xi Jinping's call to Trump wasn't really about trade. It was a covert attempt to secure a lifeline for China's collapsing economy. I do not believe Beijing ever intended to negotiate in good faith. With entrenched factions behind Xi Jinping, real compromise is nearly impossible. I talked about this. I talked about um, Xi Jinping's political enemies' position on the trade war. I think it was actually the video, the highlight video was released Monday, maybe. I lost track. Sorry. You could watch that video to get an idea of um, you know what what do what do Xi Jinping's enemies really think about the trade war? Um, so yeah, so with entrenched factions behind him, um, it's impossible for Beijing to make real compromises. Instead, the CCP sees Taiwan's wealth as the solution to its crisis, right? Um, so Xi Jinping's call failed, and Beijing, embarrassed, rushed to deny it ever happened. So, from Xi Jinping's perspective, he technically didn't talk tariffs. And that's not a lie. Think about it. He didn't really talk about tariffs with Trump. So, when the big boss says no trade talk ever took place, the entire country follows suit. Let me know what you think. That's all for today. I think we got to the bottom of why there's just so much confusion about who called who, and if tariff negotiations between China and the United States ever took place. Hopefully, I uh, have analyzed it for you. Okay, it's a mouthful to say. All right, let me see. Oh, I did want to address some questions. I think people are still giving me feedback on my talk on China's population. I think Netflix Forum posted a message saying that, so now there's pushback on your population decline info. I want to make my position clear to people. It does not hurt my feeling at all if someone can prove that China's population is much higher than what I came up with, because it will be such a relief to me to think that more people have survived, more people are actually living in China. It will actually make me happy. So it will not hurt my feeling. But then you have to prove, you have to do your due diligence. It is unthinkable to imagine that China lost so many people. So I'm not attached to my program. I'm not attached to my numbers at all. What I defend is the methodology, the approach to the challenge, but I'm not defending my results. In my opinion, if you want to get to the bottom of China's population, you need to first have a good assessment of China's population before the pandemic. And then you need to have a good way of assessing about how many people have died during the pandemic. I think assessing China's total population before the pandemic is much easier than trying to estimate how many people died during COVID. I think the second challenge is almost impossible, even though some people have tried to do it. And I shared the information with you. But at least we should have some, with the collective wisdom, with the world's army of analysts, statistical experts, there should be some consensus built around China's total population before the pandemic, right? So someone should be able to answer my question, with official fertility rate at 1.7. It's impossible for every Chinese parents to replace themselves. At fertility rate of 1.7, that's like every woman during their lifetime give birth to 1.7 children. And that's under 2. So that means every couple produce 1.7 children. That's below. So every couple is not able to replace themselves. So how could China's population grow so much in the 30 years when the official fertility rate was 1.7? That's not even a demographic question. That's a statistical mathematical question. So so I just tell you what I think. I'm not upset if someone can prove me wrong. I would be relieved to see that China actually has more people. All right. With that said, let's come back to the people who have given me super stickers. All right, let me see what people have for me. Um, Brian Koa, Brain Koa. We have a Brian Cow, and today we have a Brain Koa. Is that the same person? I think it's the same person. All right. But thank you, Brain. All right. I remember Brian Cow. Manny Kyla. Do Chinese speakers understand Korean that is written in Hanja characters, meaning Chinese characters? In old times, Koreans were written in Hanja. I can't read Koreans, but I can read some Japanese because they use Chinese characters. But the modern Korean, I think, or in ancient Korea, they use Chinese characters, but the modern Koreans, I cannot read them. I think I'll be less lost if I go to Japan, because at least I could read some of the characters. But I went to South Korea. I was completely lost. I have no idea. I cannot read their signs at all. Anyways, oh, here's one. Boy, could China. Lady Lay. Well, thank you. Thank you, boy. Let's see. Is that the end? Okay, I think I reached the bottom. Let me just pick some questions. Oh, here's one. Back to common sense now. They put the Chinese flag on Sandy Cay the other day, a sandbar near the Philippines. What can you say about this? I'm scared. I think the PLA is in shamble. I think it's totally in a chaotic state. Nobody's in control, right? The two factions are fighting. Xi Jinping's people and Zhang Youxia's people are in an ugly fight. That's why it was announced that there will be, all generals or all officers above certain ranks will be vetted one by one. So in that kind of a state, anything could happen, but anything that happens may not be indicative of the wishes of the top leadership in the PLA or in the CCP. I think random things could just happen with the intention to cause embarrassment or headaches for the top leaders. It could be anyone. It could be the Xi Jinping faction causing troubles for Zhang Youxia, or Zhang Youxia's people causing headaches for Xi Jinping. I mean, at this point, I predict things will be chaotic like that, but it's not. We should not overread into them because they may not represent the ideas coming from the top. But it's dangerous. These kind of things are dangerous because it can get out of control and start something involuntarily. Okay, let's see. Where am I? All right, let me see. Okay, I think is that the end? That's the end of the super stickers. Oh, here's a question forwarded by Chris from Daniel Conco. Conkley? How do I say your last name? Anyways, why would she think Trump would fold on Taiwan? I don't think he necessarily thinks that Trump would fold, but it's a gamble he took. Their assessment is that Trump is a deal maker. He likes to negotiate. He likes to make deals. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think Trump would fold on Taiwan. Absolutely not. But coming from Xi Jinping's perspective, and I mean, his decision is based on the advices he receives from his advisors. His advisors may tell him, "Look, uh, Trump is a deal maker. He likes to make deals on these economic uh, issues, and maybe we make concessions on all the economic front, but we demand a political statement from him." And they will make the political statement sound like it's so benign, it's so neutral that it doesn't hurt the United States, right? The United States in the past has said that it's adheres to the one China policy. So it is a gamble. It is a gamble. But I know it doesn't make sense because Trump is not going to. Trump's advisors will, his cabinet will make sure that he doesn't fall into that trap. So here's a question from 808 Bear. Are the tariffs as hard on Chinese factories as some YouTube videos claim? It's hard to assess. I mean, there are a lot of videos that showing, heartbreaks and empty factories and people just waiting. But I must tell you that in the past couple of days, the Chinese media has declared it has won because, okay, to answer your question, it's very difficult to really get an idea of what is happening across China's factories. I think it varies from industry to industry and it varies from region to region. Of course, we're seeing, some factories being completely shut down. But of course, China's economy is being affected and people's lives are being affected. But I think the impact will be felt over time. We're only a few weeks into this tariff war. So the immediate impact, I think, is not a good indication of where things are going in the long run because there's still moving parts at this point. From Mitch, they say China is building ways to get to Taiwan. They have a boat system to cross over. Is that true? Yeah, there are so many reports about all these non-conventional ways for China to get to Taiwan, or unconventional ways for China to start a war, or not start a war, unconventional ways for China to get to Taiwan. I think that's a better way to say it, because the CCP does try to avoid war because it cannot withstand the consequences. Yeah, I have seen all kinds of reports about the unusual ways that the CCP is adopting to get to Taiwan, and they have been testing. So we should think outside the box. All right, here's a question from Mitch So Nuff. Whatever happened in Beijing's 那个公园，侏罗纪公园, wasn't that a plan at some point? What happened at the 公园? Did I miss something in the past couple of days? I'm sorry. I have been so focused on the tariff war, the negotiations, the talks. I have not been focusing on what's happening on the ground in China. I know there are a lot of video channels that already cover that. So that's why I don't want to repeat what they have already said. I know there are a lot of channels like China Observers, they compile information about what's happening on the ground. So I try to focus on the analytical part, which I think is missing. All right, Norbert Klotz, with all the internal fighting inside the CCP going on, why is Taiwan still one of the highest priorities? Deflection from the truth? Desperation? Well, desperation. Desperation, I gave you the 3 reasons, right? Economic desperation. Because if you look at the history of communism, they're never very good at developing constructive economic policies to actually, build their economies. They're never very good at that. They always rely on foreign infusions of capital or foreign help or plundering someone else's assets or money to survive. That's its track record. So when CCP is in serious financial crisis, it's not capable of thinking, okay, maybe I need to relax my policies. Maybe I need to give the private sector more freedom so that the economy could thrive. I mean, that's the kind of a mentality we would have here. But that's not what CCP would think. It would think, well, where can I get some money? Where can I get some money fast? And its eyes are on Taiwan. Yeah. So, all right, Jimmy Two Toes. Is the Xi faction a faction amongst many, or is there just at a Xi faction that's rife with its intra-factional schemes? And what we're seeing is Xi reacting to the infighting like Putin's in Russia. I made a program that talked about Xi Jinping's. I mean, there are 3 major factions right now, right? The Xi Jinping faction, the Hu Jintao faction, and then the old Jiang Zemin faction. There's a 4th faction which overlaps with all 3. I mean, actually, no, with the other 2, not the Hu Jintao faction. That is the princeling. The princeling has its own group. Some of them are in the some of them in the Xi Jinping faction. I mean, there are very few. I mean, Xi Jinping himself is a princeling, and then the Jiang Zemin faction has like Zheng Qinghong, but they're just one interest group. They're not very involved in politics, but they stay behind the scene. So these are the 4 major groups that are fighting or negotiating for power. If that's the question that you have. Okay. Life Hawk. Recently from your channel, I want to convey how much I appreciate the information you provide. I want to see America pull away from China, but I also am praying for my brothers and sisters in Christ. Praying. Okay, well, welcome. I'm glad that you discover my channel. Lucky Bruno. Hi, Lei. Do you think there are CCP mole spies currently in the Chinese government? Absolutely. Absolutely. There are a lot. They're not in small numbers. It's a positive yes. Doozy. Do you think China will get control of Taiwan without World War III? Well, I think as long as the Taiwanese public are aware of CCP's game plan, which is through some of the pro-Beijing politicians, they want to bring Taiwan into the mainland through these politicians. I think as long as the public is aware of that, I think China's chances of controlling Taiwan is small because Taiwan is a democratic country. Um, I mean, judging by the ongoing recall movement, I think the Taiwanese people are very successful at um, curbing CCP's influence in Taiwan. Okay, all right. Oh, here's a super sticker. Alan Mandel, thanks for another wonderful articulate analysis of such complex issues. Mention the merchandise. I love my cup and t-shirt. Oh yes, Lay's Real Talk has a shop. I have t-shirts, which has my tagline, the wisdom to know and the courage to tell. And also cups, hat, cap, baseball cap. I forgot what else I have. T-shirts. Yeah. The link is in the description. Please check them out. Um, all right. I think I'll end it here. Oh, lava lampooning. Is factory shut down due to the COVID pandemic? Um, it's possible. There's something still spreading in China. That's another possibility. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to stop here. Yeah, oh, yeah. Chris just shared the link. Okay. I'm going to end here. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you in 2 days. Bye bye.